Could a terrorist attack be looming just around the corner to happen here in the United States? Well, SG Anon has a very important update on that. Stay tuned. It's going to get serious. And I'm just bringing you the information. Don't shoot the messenger. Stay tuned. I'm bringing SG on. This could be one of the most important broadcasts we do. There's a lot of comms being dropped, posts, the whole thing on what looks to be a potential 9/11 scale type of event that could happen here. I'm not a psychic, but could happen here in the United States in the new year. First, folks, hit the notification button. Hit the notification button. Venmo 𝗦𝗍_𝗏1977. Yes, my voice is finally back. Thank God. But I'm still feeling pretty under the weather. So 𝗬_𝗏1977. And then my book on Amazon, When the Lights Go Out, and my mama's book, The Mexican Mix. Alex is not with us today. He's taking the day off for New Year's. So I'm doing this my own again, by myself again. So it is what it is. Also, get your red light, folks. You don't want to miss this broadcast, by the way. This is an important one. Pay attention. This is a total game changer. My good friend, award-winning medical journalist Jonathan Otto, has been uncovering breakthrough healing technologies. And he says the medbed future people have been waiting for, it's already here. It's called PEMF therapy. And these mats combined with clinical red light therapy, far infrared heat, and pulsed electromagnetic fields working together in harmony, they deliver 150 millitesla of clinical strength magnetic fields. And hopefully you all can understand that. Pulsing at 1 to 30 hertz. The same natural rhythm your body and brain operate in. That means they sync with your cells, recharging energy, boosting circulation, cutting inflammation, and helping your body heal itself. This stuff really works. In breakthrough studies, people are seeing amazing results with the big C. We know what that is. Autoimmune challenges, brain and thyroid issues, chronic pain, insomnia, bone density, and even muscle loss. And the best part is, these aren't luxury items anymore. They're now the most affordable prices ever. Over time, it becomes the lowest cost therapy you'll ever own because you can use it every single day of your life. Go right now to mypmfmat.com and use code NINO25 for 25% off an individual mat, or NINO30 for 30% off bundles. Financing and payment plans are available too. So you can bring this healing operation to your home today. Folks, this stuff really works. I love it. All right. So the sale for NinosCorner.tv ends tomorrow. So I have a 50% off all new annuals. That's ending tomorrow. I can't keep this going. I mean, I've had it going for the last month. So NinosCorner.tv, 50% off, ends tomorrow, New Year's Day. And I'm telling you, folks, 2026 is going to be a year to remember. This is going to be a big, big year. And SG is going to help me deliver what he says could be a 9/11 style event. An event that must happen in order for us to continue this trajectory in the war and win this thing. Really complicated stuff, but we're going to go into it on here. So NinosCorner.tv, Wano Savin is up there right now. He's talking about saving Israel for last. I mean, are we saving Israel for last or serving Israel last? That's what I asked him. So it's up there right now on NinosCorner.tv. I have Craig Lund and 𝗀𝗃𝗃𝗁 talking about the rituals, the satanic agenda, the Luciferian agenda, what they call the 𝗬cies. They call them the 𝗬cies. That's what they call the Luciferians. A nice little cute name for them, right? Well, he says that all these assassinations are actually public sacrifices, public rituals. And Charlie Kirk was just one of 3. And the other one was, well, I'll leave it for you to watch. I'm also going to bring that up on YouTube as well. It'll be highly edited on YouTube, but it's also going to be on YouTube. I also have John Burke talking about near-death experiences, the crossing over, going into the white light, the whole thing, what happens when you flatline. He has 1,500 testimonies of people that have crossed over and come back to give their story. It's a fascinating, fascinating podcast. And that'll be up on YouTube in the next couple of days. SGN is going to be joining me right now in just a second. And we're also going to go to the back channel to talk more about this 9/11 style type of event that we are expecting. In fact, Trump is hinting to it. And we're going to be talking about that. So, folks, you might want to turn it down or turn it up, baby. Yeah, this is going to get nasty. It's going to get ugly because my voice is actually terrible. Yeah. Coming at you live from the apocalypse, folks. Yeah. All right. So I did it. I had to do it. There we go. So chaos strikes Moscow and Iran. Drone attacks knock out power for 600,000 people. World War III fears rise again. So, all right, folks, you all remember the date that 𝗬𝗏 gave. He said that January 15th, the war in Ukraine and Russia has to come to an end. We're all watching that closely. I don't know. I just bring the guests on. But could the ending be a peace deal, or could it be, I don't know, Zelensky expires? Could that be it? Could that be what we're going to be looking at here? A peace deal must be reached, or okay, so the peace deal needs to be reached. But was this attack on Moscow? I'm just posing the question. Could this have been a false flag attack on Russia by Russia to be blamed on the Ukraine to finally have the green light to go after Zelensky and eliminate him completely forever? That's just where my mind goes with this. 𝗬𝗏 never said how this would end. He just said it would end. And right now, it looks like it's escalating. So this is just my opinion, but I think this is exactly what the Dr. Putin ordered. Who knows what really Putin and Trump discussed after he rolled out the red carpet for Putin, and now apparently Putin is enraged. Russia threatens to kill Zelensky and parade his body after stirring up fury over denied Ukrainian plot to blitz Putin. Don't be surprised if Putin succeeds with this threat. So in my mind, the war is just escalated and now all bets are off. What else do I find very precarious about all this going down right now? Iran declares war as a last-ditch effort, last desperate attempt for the civil unrest that's erupting right now in Iran. So Iran has declared war on Israel, Europe, and America as their banks fail, folks. They fail and are spiraling into civil unrest and even civil war. Millions have taken to the streets in violence and protest as major banks fail in Iran. Folks, the party's just getting started here. And this is just in time for the new year. But folks, America isn't out of the woods yet. And in fact, let's just take a look at this article right here. Texas man charged. Now, I put on my X, I said, they always put things out as headlines to condition the public to get you ready for problem, reaction, solution. I still believe that. It's even happening now to this very day. Scary event is necessary. Scary event is necessary. Texas man charged with providing bomb components and funding to individuals he believed were involved with foreign terrorist organizations. An alleged ISIS sympathizer has been federally charged with an international terrorism offense after providing. I hope to God my voice gets better because I sound like Alex fucking Jones right now. I hope this just stops, man. All right. An alleged ISIS sympathizer has been federally charged with an international terrorism offense after providing bomb components and money to individuals he believed were acting on behalf of a designated foreign terrorist organization. You don't say. The case is a testament to the incredible work of our federal agents who work tirelessly to save American lives, said Attorney General Pam Bondi. Well, can we trust Pam? I don't know. That's yet to be seen. ISIS poisonous ideology must be ripped out of the root and stem. Anyone who tries to commit violence on ISIS' behalf will be found, arrested, and persecuted. You cannot hide from us. Today's announcement underscores the FBI's commitment to combating terrorism and demonstrates our continuous work to disrupt and thwart terrorist plots against the American public, said FBI Director Kash Patel. Let this serve as a warning to those who plan to conduct terrorist attacks against the United States on behalf of terrorist organizations. You will be brought to justice. So I got this text from a very good source, and I'm going to read it to you all. Well, my voice came back for a half second. Hey, David, sorry this text is long, but it's worth it. I'm not sure that you have heard about any of the following, or maybe only some, but not all. But here it goes. The Iranian people have been protesting since Sunday. Looks like they may have finally ousted the Iranian Islamic terrorist regime there. The Iranian regime military has been firing live rounds into the protest crowds, which the people protesting knew would happen. Because of this uprising, the Iranian regime just declared war on the USA, Europe, and Israel. Yes, all three, in a desperate move because of the people rising up. So they're using a war to stop the rising up. Super move. But also the UAE and Saudi Arabia are bombing each other's ships off the coast of Yemen, fighting over who will control Yemen. There's a lot of shit popping off right now. The Iranian currency has devalued to World War II Nazi Germany levels, like 1.4 million rial, IRR is its currency abbreviation, to $1 American. Yes, $1 American. So, is what popped off the protests to the level they are at right now, the currency issue. It's a lot of shit boiling over right now. So, that's what's happening in Iran, and I'm getting a lot more information on this. But I'm going to bring on SG now. SG, here you are. How are you, my friend?
Doing well, Nino. Thank you for having me back. Good to be here.
Boy, I need you on this show, brother. My voice is gone. So, SG, I'm going to bring up the picture right now just to show it. There it is. Do you want to go ahead and start explaining this in some detail to my audience?
Well, I'd be happy to, but I want to give some context and a little bit of longitudinal background before I dive into why I arrived at the interpretation that I did from this post by the POTUS on the 30th of December, which that was just yesterday. So just in the last 30 days, here are some headlines that I think are worth the audience being aware of, because you correctly pointed out just a moment ago that headlines are always 100% of the time, there is no exception, always used to create a predictive neuro-linguistic program in the mass consciousness. There is creative power in what people come to expect. If I expect to be stuck in traffic, I'm probably going to end up stuck in traffic. If I expect to have a bad day at work, I'm usually going to have a bad day at work. A lot of times I'll talk myself right into that bad day. And so as I look at what's happening with the headlines, these headlines have come out just in the last 30 days, a couple of them just in the last 5 days. This coming from The Sun. I was immersed in London's terrorist underbelly as a sleeper agent, planned a new 9/11, and it's coming any day. And that headline ends with says ex-MI6 spy Ayman Dean. This is another headline just in the last couple of days. This coming from the Justice Department. 𝗀𝗏 sentenced to life in prison for conspiring to commit 9/11 style terrorist attack on behalf of Al-Shabaab. Now, who else is in the news right now with respect to Al-Shabaab? Well, that's the entirety of their funding apparatus inside the United States of America, and specifically the fraudulent funding mechanism that was sidestepping legal channels like Treasury and foreign aid payments and things like that, because the volume of money that could be sent across international boundary lines through the black market is so much higher because, of course, you have no restrictions. So when I saw this particular post coming out from President Trump. And of course, we've seen the rhetoric from President Trump escalating in recent months about, the invasion that has happened at the southern border. There's been several executive orders securing the integrity of the United States, clarifying the military's role in defending the homeland. That was one of the very first executive orders put out by the administration. And now we have President Trump sharing a picture on Truth Social of windmills, the number 13, and the date 9/11, the date stamp, clearly, plainly visible in the picture.
Wow.
But the year itself is cropped out. And if you look at the date it was posted, December 30th, so it's just yesterday, the gematria on that reads 1, 2, 3. So in common symbolic understanding, 1, 2, 3, or uno, dos, tres means go after that third count. That's sort of a cyclical thing. It's a triune thing for humanity. The number 3 is very symbolic. I can get into that, but it takes a long time to break that down. But the rest of the symbolism here, talking about the bald eagle. So that's clearly
is that a bald eagle or just a dead? It looks like a hawk or something. I don't know what that is, but it's a dead bird for sure.
Well, and it's sort of hard to tell from the picture itself, but I will say the more important point from how I look at that is what President Trump said. He called it a bald eagle. That's clearly a reference to the United States of America. Windmills clearly tie back to a changing of the winds, a changing in the powers of the air. Power itself is tied back to this concept of windmills and sustainable energy generation and things like that. So in my opinion, what we have here from President Trump is not simply an oddly placed reminder about how flawed the current green energy agendas are, although it clearly is plainly that, but it's also a very symbolic statement here that the country itself is in the throes of a battle, and there is a new 9/11 or a 9/11 scale style threat that is being dealt with right now and may provide itself more fully forward in the days and weeks to come. We know that Secretary Hegseth was ordered to issue a directive to the Pentagon to prepare quick reaction forces for the United States National Guard specifically in all 50 states. And the deadline for that was today. So as we look at what's happening with Iran, as we look at what's happening with this post coming out from President Trump, the number 13 is another Illuminati power number. It ties back to Friday the 13th, the year 1307, October 13th, 1307, when Prince Philip had a great number of the Knights Templars arrested for conspiracy to destroy the state. This is absolutely a powerful communication in an irregular warfare lens from the commander-in-chief, stating essentially that there are profound implications for what's going to happen in the new year of 2026. And we are going to arrive at a point where military law has to be enforced in certain jurisdictions because it is the appropriate response. He's told us that by way of these truth posts coming out talking about holding President Obama before a military commission or having a military. You have to have a reason to be that extreme, to be that just and final in your approach to things. And so I think this is another rung in the ladder along that journey, Nino.
So there's a lot of people that have come out. Even Candace Owens herself has said a 9/11 attack is coming in December. She said December. Obviously, that didn't happen, but that does not mean that it's not coming. I mean, we all have been anticipating this. I've been warning about this for a very, very long time now, 5 years. And it is the necessary scare event, correct? But it's not the white hats that are going to do it, but we're going to be watching it happen in a controlled fashion, right, SG? I mean, we know we can't stop it, but it can be controlled in a sense, correct? So in other words, it's going to be like an implosion of like watching a Las Vegas building go down. We're going to gate off the perimeters, move everyone back. We know it's coming, but it's going to be controlled to the best of our ability, correct?
Well, it's interesting that you say that. I think you just summarized how hybridized warfare or extreme consciousness warfare has to work, right? You may not be able to stop every single thing that comes down the pike, but if you can control the variables that will come as a response to whatever that thing is, even before it occurs, then you actually own the battlefield. You may not own that moment on the battlefield, but you own and control the battlefield. And one of the things that I think is so significant about this, Nino, is the fact that we keep talking about this issue. All roads lead back to the 44th president. All roads lead back to Hussein Obama and the myriad litany of things that occurred inside the 8 years of that administration that really oriented the world on a path towards total nuclear Armageddon and annihilation. And so when we look at this situation with Russiagate, when we look at the situation with certain crimes of sexualized nature, when we look at situations tying back to the funding of foreign groups, why were multiple billions of dollars sent to Iran off book. Why did the Obama government send more than $700 million to Somalia in the time that he was in office, right? Why did we take in over 80,000 Somalian refugees during that period of time? What really happened in Syria? Where is Benghazi, right? These types of things all have to sort of end themselves up in the mix, if you will, in the cauldron at the end of this discussion. And so when we look at President Trump's Truth Social, I love following that profile, not only because it provides a temperature for where the president is at, but it also acts as a megaphone, a telecommunications mechanism, for lack of a better term, that lets people know what the president is expecting or maybe what the president is looking at. But you have to look a little bit in between the lines to do that. And so with respect to this post, I just want to come back to this really quickly. You're talking about this attack potentially occurring domestically in the United States. Obviously, the border is, at this point in time, it's a well-settled public consciousness narrative about the danger of the border. When we look at the immigration situation, that's been harped on essentially nonstop since the beginning of the very first Trump campaign, then through the first Trump presidency, then through the 4 years of Biden, then through the current year so far. So it's a very well-established precedent, but there has to be a bow tie to it. There has to be a reason that all of this is being done. And so when we look at that post, it was posted, if I'm not mistaken, at 5:44 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is also 17:44 in military time. And for your clever audience members out there, there's a certain entity online that I can't get too much into on the fluff tube that put out a lot of very interesting information, and drop 1,744 is absolutely powerfully fascinating, because it is that entity highlighting a post that was put out on July the 28th of 2018. And it's just a simple reshare, but the post put out on July the 28th, 2018, the same day that this other post was put out, concludes with these words: "Do you understand the government is being gutted publicly? Bottom, middle, top. Hussein, Iran connection. Bombs away. Merry Christmas." And
Wow.
so as we look at this, you can sort of see the symbolic tie over, right? You're seeing the language being fleshed out into the public for. It's not only the narrative prep, but it's also the public following along with pictographic communication and symbolic communication and geopolitical events that are not all as they seem, right? That declaration from Tehran has nothing to do with an actual warfare state whatsoever. It has everything to do with money. When we look at what's happening inside Tel Aviv, the expansion of strikes in Lebanon, the expansion of strikes in Syria, the unfortunate death of U.S. service members recently in Syria, and my heart goes out for those that suffered that tragedy after all these years. It almost belies logic, or defies logic, excuse me. But when we look at all of that, it has nothing to do with the surface level politics that everyone is being shovel fed at nonstop pace. It is only to do with money and power. And so as we look at what's happening right now, the only way to save yourself when there is nothing when there's no other method to be saved, is to come out of the shadows and really blow the lid off. And I think that's what President Trump and a lot of other leaders and journalists and people that are following the pulse are beginning to understand is going to happen before this journey is over.
So when I see the number 13 there, like everyone else, I'm thinking January 13th. Do we have any intel on how they'll hit America? What is it going to be? Bombings? Is it going to be bank failures? I mean, silver is already skyrocketing through the roof. Do we have any idea on how they're going to attack us?
Well, this part would be pure speculation. I want to make sure that that's clear for the audience out there. I've seen a lot of good research highlighting two major risk areas, which would instantly require military jurisdiction in order to handle. One of them is biological, radioactive contamination of the water supply, and the other is nuclear in the form of like a ransom situation or a hostage situation, several nuclear devices or a rogue nuclear event happening to be blamed on a certain power or a number of powers. But those are the two primary prevailing theories that I've seen. It would not surprise me in either fashion, but I don't want to pigeonhole into specific expectations or discussions for the audience out there. One of the things that irregular warfare is all about is learning to adapt in the moment and flux with things. If you have to shift the approach or the actual scaffolding that is taken to execute a specific essence of an event, then that's easily done and very fluid and dynamic in an irregular warfare situation. And we are living in the most complex irregular warfare situation that humanity has ever faced. So as we look at the potential of what could come, I would argue that we have to look at the very basic fundamentals. Anything that is attention grabbing, anything that concerns large population centers, anything that is deeply behind blue state enemy lines, because of course we know that a great deal of those blue states are actively funding some of these foreign designated terrorist organizations. That is now an actual factual claim that we've fleshed out as a result of the events in Minnesota. And as we look at the need to bring in these quick reaction forces that Secretary Hegseth directed the Pentagon to develop earlier this year, it would have to be for some sort of simultaneous threat or simultaneous emergency. You don't need all 50 states on ready, on go at the same time normally, unless there's something to be expected or some sort of event or circumstance that the military is expecting to have to face down and perhaps assist the civilian authorities with. And I would submit to you, Nino, it would not surprise me if we see something like this in the first 3 to 6 months of 2026.
Right. I mean, I'm even thinking January, as early as January. And I have the silver price up right now. Silver continues to just keep going up, folks. There it is right there. It's at 71. Where do you expect silver to hit 100, in the next couple months, SG? What's your thoughts on this?
I think with silver, what we're going to see, and I'm not a financial advisor by any means, but I think what we're going to see is this desperate attempt to keep the lid on the pressure cooker as the pressure continues to build. And eventually that pressure is going to explode out, and you're going to see rapid multi-dollar gains on the hour in 2026. By the time we get to July, August, September timeframe of next year, I'm expecting at least $125 to $150 an ounce. Silver could be higher. I've talked to a number of analysts that think $250 by December of 2026 is a conservative estimate based on the current mining supply and demand out there. And something we haven't talked about yet, Nina, but we should talk about it because it's going to drive a lot of these other events, is China. The great panda of the East, if you will, or the dragon of the East. The Chinese are going to be restricting silver exports almost entirely in about 24 hours. When we see that hit the U.S. marketplace and the Western world markets in general, you're not going to just affect finance markets. You're going to affect the Pentagon. You're going to affect GCHQ in Britain. You're going to affect all of the military services across NATO because every one of them needs silver. We are a highly electronic world now that includes weapons of war, that includes technological capabilities deployed by highly advanced forces around the world. And so for China, which controls an enormous amount of the readily available land-mined silver supply, to be entirely restricting those exports going into 2026, you're going to see desperation moves in response from the Western world military industrial complex.
A lot of people in the chat right now are saying that that's actually a falcon. Does the falcon represent Iran?
I'm not familiar with the falcon terminology.
I think the falcon is Iran, isn't it? People put it in the chats. 1 second, SG. One last thing. All right, folks, get your canola dine. You know what time it is, but you know what's wild? Every year, Big Pharma rakes in billions, keeping people hooked on pain pills, but never actually fixing the problem. And now what are people hooked on? Fentanyl. They get off their pain pills and they go straight to fentanyl. If you deal with daily pain, please listen closely because there's finally something that's breaking that cycle. It's called canoladine, and people are calling it nature's morphine. Here's why. It gives you that same kind of powerful relief, but without the pills, the fog, or the risk of addiction, and that's important. Take it from an addict, folks. It actually helps your body advocate its own natural painkillers, the same ones that pain meds try to mimic. After 14 years of research, over 2 million bottles have been already shipped because it works. Real people are getting their lives back, sleeping better, moving again, and doing it naturally. And right now, you can try it risk-free for 90 days. For less than $1 a day, no gimmicks, no subscriptions. Just honest relief from GDR Labs made right here in America. If you're tired of being part of Big Pharma's business model, it's time to finally break free. Go to trycono.com/Nino. Trycono.com/Nino. It's down there at the bottom, folks. All right, SG, it says right here, 600,000 Russians plunged into darkness as Ukrainian drones strike Moscow. According to Ukrainian reports, as many as 500,000 people have been left without electricity. Residential buildings, including tower blocks in the capital, have been captured in complete darkness. Footage has been shared all over social media. Street lamps also appear to be taken to be in blackout in some areas, with only some source of light coming from the cars on the roads. An X account promoted an open source intelligence monitor focused on Europe and conflicts shared to the footage. Russian channels are reporting that large portions of Moscow are currently without power amidst a large scale drone attack currently underway against the Russian capital by Ukraine. Now, SG, I want your opinion on this. Do you think it's really by Ukraine, or is this just what the doctor ordered in Moscow so they can now effectively do whatever they have to do, be given the green light to go after 𝗬𝗏𝗡?
Well, I think that's a fascinating theory. I have to admit, on my end, it would only be a theory. I haven't researched that angle on it. But something that I find exceedingly interesting about the timing with this, Nino, is the fact that for the last 3 to 5 months, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, and Finland have all been buffering up and bolstering their cyber warfare capabilities. And so it would not surprise me if this is an electronic warfare attack by the CIA remnant, what we would call the CIA extension arm, over in the far east of Europe, to provoke Moscow into an unreasonable response with Ukraine. And when we look at the fact that there were more than 300 drones intercepted by Russian air defense just in the last 36 hours, it sort of defies reason to think that all of those came from mainland Ukraine. You know, these are areas that have been completely inundated over the last couple of years. There's been several thousand drone strikes just in the last couple of months by Moscow on all manner of open fields, power structure, airfields, planning facilities, in both rural and metro areas. So I look at the number that was released in a single 24-hour period. I find it hard to think that that came entirely from Ukraine. But provided that it did come entirely from Ukraine, it would still require flight path coordination, avionics coordination, training, and assistance from NATO personnel who are supplying this advanced weaponry to basically what amounts to a bunch of thugs inside Kiev that don't fully understand how to wage complex war on their own. They really have to have their hand held. And that's been the nature of things since 2014, when we got essentially carte blanche to move in the CIA operation and create a power state entirely based on the intelligence community disruption and destabilization model. And when you look at that model having been successfully deployed in the Baltic regions over the last 50 years, really successfully deployed actually in those areas, and the large amount of NATO presence on the ground, the significant actions coming from the government of Estonia, tank trapping the Estonia-Russian river that runs along the border. Latvia just a few days ago completed a concrete barricade wall that they've erected on the border between themselves and Russia. They're clearly expecting the bear to look in their direction. And so one has to step back and say, well, why would that occur? I could absolutely see that occurring if we see some sort of intelligence community infiltration or manipulation, involvement essentially in the Ukrainian conflict extrajudicially and undeclared.
So it says here that Russia threatens to kill 𝗬𝗏𝗡 and parade his body after stirring up fury over denied Ukrainian plot to blitz Putin. Russia threatened to kill Vladimir 𝗬𝗏𝗡 and put his body in public display after ramping up rage over a denied Ukrainian plot to blitz Vladimir Putin. So I've had, Stuart Swerdlow, my audience knows who Stuart Swerdlow is. He got the end of the government shutdown completely correct to the precise day. I don't know how he knew that, but he says that the Russian-Ukrainian war will be ended by January 15th, but he doesn't say on how. Now, I don't know if it's going to be a peace deal reached, but it doesn't look that way to me as of right now. It looks like they really do want 𝗬𝗏𝗡's head on a stick, and they want to parade his body in downtown Moscow. I mean, these threats, to me, pack a punch, and I think they're going to follow through with this. Could we see 𝗬𝗏𝗡 executed by January 15th? Do you think they're going to go all in and try to get this guy?
Well, I will say this: if 𝗬𝗏𝗡 is not able to flee Europe in any significant fashion, or if there is nowhere safe for 𝗬𝗏𝗡 to go, and he falls into Russian custody, he absolutely will be executed, and probably publicly executed. As we look at what's happening right now on the ground in Ukraine, you know, I still look at the Russian goal on this as the security of the Russian state. If they get Zelensky, it's great. If they don't get Zelensky, they'll get him eventually. And I think the Russians are aware of that. They have friends all over the world. They've cultivated tremendous dynamics away from the Western model over the last 4 years alone. So and I think with the interconnectivity of money and the flow of money and things like that, the Russians aren't terribly worried about not ever having a chance at Vladimir. But I think what we're looking at right now with the Russians is an approach to territorial reintegration, right? You've got a significant amount of Mother Russia that was piecemealed away beginning after the First World War, and then again very heavily during and immediately after the Second World War. And so as we look at the 20th century and the righting of some of those ancestral, generational, territorial wrongs, while it is impossible and impracticable to try and rewind the clock very far, certain areas that have always been ancestrally Russian are probably going to fall back under Russian control. And so Odessa, Ukraine is one that comes to mind. It's the largest port city on the Black Sea. It's literally on the breadbasket area of Ukraine down in the south, with the fields of the west part of Ukraine being just ancillary to that. It also runs, if I'm not mistaken, just south of or right alongside with the Dnieper River that then splits the Ukraine up to the northeast. And we see Russian forces on the move in the Zaporizhzhia and Odessa regions, or near the Odessa region, as well as in the Sumy region, which is in the northwest of Ukraine, the northeast of Ukraine, not terribly far from Kiev. So it would not surprise me at all if, in response to an escalated event or a continual involvement of these on-the-ground NATO forces, which Russia has said multiple times they are actively engaged with. This is not just a Ukrainian war. They know that they are fighting NATO soldiers on Ukrainian soil. But as we look at moving into the first of the year, if there's a significant event that comes from all of this that compels Russia to move into a forward offensive posture, it would not surprise me, Nino, if we see a blitzkrieg style operation that nails Odessa, Zaporizhzhia, and Kiev all in the same week. And if that occurs, it may provide a rapid and immediate incentive for the Western world oligarchs to backpedal and get their feet out of the fire, if you will, because the heat has just been turned way, way up.
I've been told that Putin will have his nemesis delivered to him, who will be Zelensky, and Trump will get his nemesis, who is Obama. I'm not going to say who I've heard that from, but I've heard both men will be very satisfied when they'll get their revenge served on a cold platter, so to speak. And I heard both men will be getting their revenge, one being Trump with Obama and one being Putin with Zelensky. I'm going to go ahead and share this right here. Iran warns of severe response in wake of Trump's new strikes threat. So Trump has threatened a new military action with Israel and Iran for their missiles and nuclear program. United States President Donald Trump has suggested that Washington would consider further military action against Iran if Tehran, you like how I said that? Tehran rebuilds its nuclear program or missile capacity. Speaking from Florida on Monday, Trump refused to rule out a follow-up attack after U.S. airstrikes in June damaged 3 Iranian nuclear facilities. Now I hear that Iran is trying to build back up again, and if they are, we're going to have to knock them back down, Trump told reporters. We'll knock them down, we'll knock the hell out of them, but hopefully that's not what's happening. Trump issued this threat as he welcomed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to Mar-a-Lago Estate in Palm Beach, Florida. So now that Iran is spiraling out of control, there's chaos on the streets, millions of people on the streets, ransacking, protesting, the whole thing. Is what they need a war, SG?
It is the only way to save what is going on inside Iran. And I want to add another element, another dimensionality to this discussion just for the audience out there, because it is all irregular warfare. And I can't say that enough. What we've got going on inside Iran is not just the death of a surface level extremist political faction, which is a sort of a theocratic on its face. It is also the death of the intelligence community's control of Persia. And so as we look at what's occurring here, the intel community and the deep state military industrial community have been in control of Iran basically since the 50s and the 60s, when the Iranian and the Arabian oil became the main focus of resource consolidation and conglomeration post-World War II. And so when we could take that back to Iran-Contra, the Iranian Revolution, all of that to show the different punctuation marks along the way. But regardless, that control was maintained until the present day in time by the manipulation of the monetary system and the control of the monetary system. So what do we have happening Simultaneously right now with Iran's destabilization, we have the Iraqi government essentially getting ready to revalue internally and submit documentation to the world. We have the Tel Aviv government absolutely freaking out about their control of resources and their vision for a greater establishment state there in the Arabic world. We have the Egyptian government literally revealing payoffs going to a number of terrorist groups out of Cairo, which are now under Egyptian investigation. We have the Saudis and the UAE at each other. So what is this creating? This is creating a powder keg, a literal a firework box, if you will, inside the Middle East, Nino, where the intelligence community cannot navigate what event or events are going to come next. They don't know where the threat comes from next. Does it come from the Iranian people? Does it come from Saudi Arabia? Does it come from Israel? Now we have President Trump in the mix. Is it going to come from some B-2 bomber up in the sky again? They don't know which direction to look. And that is the condition needed in order to move this operation more fully forward. When we look at the lineage of Ayatollah Khomeini, for example, this is an individual who is the son of a British oil tycoon who is a Freemason. When we look at the Iranian parliament reshaped in the post-Iranian Revolution world, it's covered with Freemasonic symbolism. This entire operation is about destroying the shadow locus of control that is on the ground inside Tehran, and they are absolutely in panic mode with the rhetoric escalation happening in the narrative space.
So, U.S. hit drug boat loading facility in Venezuela. Here it is. We finally struck Venezuela in their on their shores. Operation marks first known U.S. activity inside Venezuela. Government and U.S. agencies silent on incident. Trump previously said he authorized CIA covert operations inside Venezuela. So, President Donald Trump said on Monday that the U.S. had hit an area in Venezuela where boats are loaded with drugs, marking the first known time Washington has carried out a land operations in Venezuela since a pressure campaign began against President Nicolas Maduro's government. There was a major explosion on the dock area where the boats load up with drugs, Trump said. So what do you have to say about this, SG? It looks like it's time. I mean, once we see one, we'll see many more, correct?
I hate to wax repetitive, Nino, but when we were just talking about Iran, this situation in Venezuela, this is Iran in the Western Hemisphere. This is exactly the same situation, the CIA locus of control being smoked out and forced out into the light inside greater South America. We're not just talking about Venezuela, but all of the northern half of the continent, and the tremendous amount of control that they've exercised in the central part of the continent, Paraguay, Uruguay, French Guiana, all of these other areas where there's sort of like no names that don't catch a lot of attention to the public eye, but there's absolutely significant feeder operations happening there as well that are being smoked out and affected by what's going on in Venezuela. And when we think back in time, Nicolas Maduro was one of the individuals in 2020 and 2021 when the acute phase of those events that happened in those years was ongoing with the health event and the election event and things like that. And Maduro held a red folder publicly a number of separate times at a press conference, and then he was photographed walking with it again in front of the Venezuelan presidential palace. And when we look now at what's happening with respect to on the ground in Venezuela, if we extract ourselves a little bit from this surface level narrative, oh, the U.S. is attacking Nicolas Maduro. No, what's really happening is Nicolas Maduro is creating a kill box scenario where the shadow state structures that have been arm twisting the entirety of the Venezuelan government and the Venezuelan people for a very long time, the same structure that he played ball with for a long time, he is now creating a kill box scenario where they can't get out of the way. They can't remove themselves and also stay hidden. They either have to declare themselves publicly or they have to leave the country. And that's exactly what's occurring right now, Nino. You're seeing the pressure campaign continuing to escalate to force those black market criminal systems and that shadow state structure inside Venezuela, and really with feeler arms into Colombia and Brazil and Peru as well. You're seeing that, and Ecuador, you're seeing that forced out into the light or forced off of the continent by what's happening in the Caribbean and in Venezuela.
And I'm hearing that we could even see Colombia next, right? I mean, we just struck Nigeria. We hit camps in Nigeria. We just hit Venezuela. And I'm hearing, and I don't know if you're hearing the same thing, SG, but Colombia could be on the list as well.
I've heard the same thing. I've also heard Panama as well for another contender, just because of their connection with the gangs and the criminality that come out of Asia and have been funneled off of mainland China for a long time, and the entrenchment of the Chinese intelligence community inside Panama and northern Colombia near the Darien Gap. It's all, it sounds so boring, right? It reads like a book where you're halfway through, but you already sort of know how the ending goes, because the next 8 chapters are sort of the same flavor, the same essence. It's all about dragging out the tentacles now. It's about destroying the junction nodes. It's about destroying the safe houses. It's about destroying the bunkers. It's about destroying where they've hidden themselves inside of these countries, sometimes without even the knowledge of that country's own government. Paraguay did not know that the CIA was operating on the ground for more than 25 years. And when it came out publicly, it was a big diplomatic scandal, but it was barely covered in the Western press. So when we look at what's happening now, it is that same playbook, that same pattern of reclamation and intervention happening all around the world. Why are we seeing places struck in Africa? Because the intelligence community set up a shadow power network there. Why are we seeing places being struck in the Middle East area, or in Eastern Europe, or in South America? It is the exact same answer. Different flavor, different faces, different places, but the exact same overall essence of the story, the exact same plot. And as we see President Trump exercise the authorization for use of military force against all terrorism that threatens the United States, which is basically what the 9/18/2000 congressional authorization 2001 congressional authorization states, we're going to see that issue eventually brought up in the narrative and in the public discourse inside the United States of America, because enough military action will be needed to bring this deep state apparatus to heel that the American population will begin to question how much is too much for the commander-in-chief to have.
And in other news, folks, Mamdani will be the first New York City mayor to use the Quran as he's sworn in. When 𝗀𝗵𝗶𝗹 is sworn in as mayor of New York City on January 1st, he will represent a range of demographics the city has not yet seen before in top leadership. So, but for the New York mayors, New York's hundreds and thousands of Muslim residents who have taken pride in seeing one of their own rise to the top of morality, his inauguration will bring another special first rooted in tradition. So, all right, folks, this is the way I look at it. If anything's going to happen, SG, I have a feeling that New York could be on the list. And if they were going to strike a certain city, it'll be right after 𝗀𝗵𝗶𝗹 gets sworn in to New York, probably the weeks following after that. Am I a warm or hot here or cold?
Well, I could see it being more like months as opposed to weeks, but not
okay,
years.
Let's say whatever. After he gets sworn in, I guarantee you, once he gets that stronghold in New York, I could say that New York is on the hit list.
It would make a lot of sense, I think, for again, the poetic symbolism of tying off this phase of America's walk through the cultural journey. As we look back to 9/11/2001, many of us out there remember what the country was like before that. It was much better, and the country changed dramatically after that, and not for the better. And the entire world, in fact, changed dramatically after that, and not for the better. So as we look at tying that off, we know that it was treasonous. We know that there was domestic treason involved and treachery involved. We know there was foreign treachery and acts of war involved. We know there were paramilitary forces involved. We know that there were civilians and government officials and military officials that were all involved in making that sequence of events happen, and then the cover story that came after that, and then the things that occurred around the world as a result of that. And so there has to be an end to that story. We have to write the last chapter of the book that they began writing immediately after the turn of the millennium. And so New York would make a great deal of sense for being involved in that chapter. I could actually see East and West, New York and California, being simultaneous targets of interest. They're heavily blue. We know that they're frauded. We know that there's a tremendous amount of, just an unparalleled amount of corruption happening in those areas, perhaps only rivaled by Chicago here in the domestic United States. And my personal favorites for targets, and this is just pure speculation on my part, I want the audience to know that, but my personal favorites for a potential symbolic target of a 9/11 style event would be the Golden Gate Bridge and the Statue of Liberty. Liberty and the Golden Gateway to the future being the attacks, the final attacks from this, deep state apparatus that we've been in a war with really for a very long time, but certainly knowingly and consciously since 2020. I think that would not surprise me if we see something like that come against those structures.
All right, SG, I need your opinion on this. I want to get your intel on this, what you're being told from your sources, or what your thoughts are on this. But there's an article that just recently came out that adds up with one of my guests' briefings. He says there it's briefings, his briefings, where President Trump could step down and JD Vance will take the helm of the ship. So I'm asking you, are you hearing the same thing? Because now an article has just come out that says Trump, 79, hints he may leave presidency for a full-time job. Donald Trump, now 79 and back in the White House, is once again blurring the line between political theater and entertainment career planning. In a series of remarks and online posts, he has floated the idea of stepping away from the presidency to take on what he calls another full-time job, reviving speculation about his long-standing fascination with television and media. And I don't think that's what it would be, but the comments are half a joke, half trial balloon, but they raise a real question about how seriously he treats the office he holds and how much of this political project he now rooted through his personal brand. Well, they obviously don't know that he's a military operation, but 𝗬𝗏 has said that it'll be Vance and Marco Rubio. Are you hearing anything like this? Any whispers at all about this?
I had not heard that at all, and I would have to research that myself and see what I could flesh out with it. At first impression, it would surprise me. At second impression, I could see something like a dramatic political shifting up necessary immediately prior to something like the scale of events that we've talked about on this call. You know, it's so interesting, you know, as we go through this Great Awakening period, we have these discussions, and it's not just you and I, but I mean, all across the alternate information space, people are having these discussions, very blasé style discussions about world-changing, original first-time events, unprecedented moments, and repeating of you know, unprecedented moments along the way of humanity in the last 30 to 50 years. And we talk about it as though it's just like the humdrum business as usual. But really what we're talking about is fundamentally altering the political landscape of America forever. That means our children, our children's children, their grandchildren, on and on down the line will know and experience and live within, alongside, and inside of a different political system than the type that we are accustomed to. This is huge. So if we see something like that happen with President Trump, where perhaps he steps away, you know, for one reason or another, I couldn't even begin to speculate why, and we see a rise to the presidency of Vance and Rubio, or Vance and someone else, if we were to then see dramatic, you know, America altering or civilization pausing style events happening as a result of that, would that provide the military enough cause to step back and call Trump back for his opinion on things in a way that he could not offer his opinion as the sitting president and commander-in-chief? I think that's a reasonable assumption, but it is, again, after hearing that just for the first time, it is only an assumption.
You know, no one agrees with that, but I can't help that Stuart has gotten a couple predictions right on the money. So let's see what happens January 15th. Let's see what happens by the end of this year. I don't know. I leave it up to my audience for that. But folks, in other news, George Clooney and his wife, 𝗫, I guess that's how you say her name, and their twins awarded French citizenship. A lot of celebrities are leaving right now. They're getting the hell out of America. And I can only think, is it because, I don't know, could it be because the Epstein files drop? There's a million more documents being dropped, folks. That's a huge number. Imagine the names in those files. I can't help but think, I don't know, a lot of celebrities are getting the hell out of America right about now. What's your thoughts on that, SG?
Well, I think you're talking about exactly the same thing that I would assert about this issue. And I think it's even deeper than the Epstein situation as a whole. I think the ones that are actually taking the time and the trouble to move the entirety of their estates and wealth out of the United States of America understand that they're going to be connected to more than just sexual crimes with minors. And I don't want to minimize that. You know, that's a huge deal. That is life destroying for a child. And I want to acknowledge that for the audience. But at the same time, there are different levels of sadism out there. And when we look at the levels that actually qualify as bona fide, not war crimes, but human rights abuses, crimes against humanity, actual crimes of torture, purposeful, premeditated, with the goal to maximize suffering. Those types of individuals will have everything stripped away from them, probably including their life by the time everything is over. And so I think you see a lot of them shifting away from the domestic United States, going elsewhere around the world where they think they're going to have greater protection from the security services and the state intel communities. And you're going to have more protection probably in France than you would domestically in the United States, just because of the concentrated level of geography, and there's a lot smaller of a region that those security services can police and maintain under their thumb. But by the time everything is over, I don't think anywhere is going to be safe for people like that.
I don't either. I do not either. I think that's just it's going to be a Band-Aid on a gaping wound, and I think justice will come for all of them. I don't think they're going to be able to walk the streets, as that post has always said. Do you agree with that?
I absolutely do. And that entity has said a number of times on this particular issue, when all is said and done, there will be nowhere left that is safe to hide.
All right, SG, I know we're going to @Nino'sCorner.tv right now to finish this up, to wrap this up, but do you want to stick around for some what the fuck news?
Certainly.
All right, let's get to it. All right, folks, in what the fuck news, it's a mess under there, California man says. Bear refuses to leave his home. Though the state of California has certain squatters' rights, it's doubtful they apply to the many black bears roaming Los Angeles County. And according to a man living in Aldenia, one of them decided to move into his crawl space and has refused to leave for several months. Now he's accusing the California Department of Fish and Wildlife of leaving him to deal with an enormous creature on his own and plans to sue. According to the 63-year-old Ken Johnson, the bear moved in just before Thanksgiving and has wreaked havoc on his property ever since, the outlet said. I can hear the plastic being shredded underneath the house, and one of the cameras picked it up, just bulldozing through it. It's a mess under there, Johnson told the outlet. At first, CDFW set a bear trap near the crawl space, but allegedly abandoned further plans to help after accidentally capturing the wrong bear. KTLA said they must have a serious bear problem out there. Just when biologists started using the air horns to force the bear out and appeared to make some progress, they were ordered to cease operations, Johnson told the publication. I felt very defeated. I just dropped. Now what? It's all up to me, and I'm supposed to watch my phone when he comes out in the middle of the night or sleep in the kitchen and listen to him every night. So this dude's living with a bear that has decided to squat under his house. I don't know, man. I think this is kind of awesome. It's kind of cool, right? I mean, shit, dude has a pet bear. SG, you there?
Indeed. I'm just reflecting on the ridiculousness of the news spectrum. We go from incredibly serious events to things like this. It's sometimes is understandable how it's hard to keep up.
That's why it's what the fuck news. I got to bring a little lighthearted fucking articles to the program every now and then, but I think this is just funny. And the guy better get pretty creative because they're not going to help him at all. Maybe give I don't want to say it, but man, maybe give the bear some.
I've heard salmon goes a long way.
What's that?
I've heard salmon can go a long way with bears.
I don't know. I think it's pretty funny. Well, SG, thank you for joining me. Let's go to @Nino'sCorner.tv right now. Finish it up there. I appreciate you coming on, SG, and providing your intel to the broadcast.
Thank you for having me back, Nino. Good to be here. See you on the flip side.
I'll see you on .tv. All right, folks, and that's it for me. I will see you on @Nino'sCorner.tv. It's still 50% off right now on all new annuals. All new annuals are 50% off. It ends tomorrow, and I'm jumping on with SGN on right now on @Nino'sCorner.tv to wrap this up. All right, folks, see you later. And the new heavyweight champion of podcasting and the black sheep of broadcasting, folks. Hopefully, I can get this cold under control. Later, folks.